Painting white sucks. It sucks almost as much as Altair sucks at swimming. And that's going to be a problem as the main color of the assassin uniform is traditionally white. But don't worry, because in this video I'm going to show you 2 easy ways to paint white that you can use on all the assassin models in the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice board game. White is one of those colors that really puts the pain in painting miniatures. And what better proof is there than the multitude of white painting tutorials you can find on YouTube. While helpful, most of these videos show a more traditional method of building up the white paint job over many layers, and while it works, it's time consuming and honestly, I was not looking forward to it. Now, while I have painted some white models before, I must confess that I'm still not very confident with it. But I came across a somewhat modern method of painting white and I decided to give it a shot using the Assassin's Creed Apprentice models. They are mostly used as NPCs in the headquarters until your assassins get incapacitated. So they are perfect test models to practice painting white before you paint your player characters. So I'll be splitting up our 4 Assassin Apprentice models into 2 teams and trying one method on each team. So for the first method, we'll be starting from a Grey Seer Undercoat. And for the second method, we also start with Grey Seer but with a little bit of a zenithal highlight using Corax White. So here we have the 2 sets of models together and the one of the... yeah, I can't see a difference either. So the first method is rather simple. On the Grey Seer Undercoat, we will use dry brushing to build up the white color. The white that I will be using is Ghost Grey, and I'm using the Artist Opus dry brush, which is a soft round dry brush that allows for a soft blending of color. With just a little paint, we're going to slowly build up the color to this light white. It's quite hard to see the blend on the camera, but that's okay because if the contrast is too stark, things will start to look really weird. I focus on trying to catch as many of the raised edges as possible, which also acts as a bit of a highlight. It may take a few rounds of dry brushing, but it's important to take it slow and build up the color gradually. For the second method, we start with a model that already has a little bit of a zenithal highlight. The first thing we're going to do is give the model a little bit of a pre-highlight using Ghost Grey. Once the pre-highlight is on, we're going to be painting the whole model with Apothecary White. Apothecary White is a little bit different from other contrast paints in that it acts more like a light grey wash. The method for using it is quite similar to using a shade for other colours. After it's applied, it will give a really subtle shading to the white, and we can then bring the vibrancy back up with dry brushing and smooth out the transitions. As before, it's important to remember to take it slow. You might be tempted to put on more paint and try and finish it over less steps, but the effect is much better if you build it up slowly and gradually over many layers. And that's pretty much all there is to the white, and while it doesn't look like much now, it's going to come together once we start filling in all the details. For the details, the first thing I will paint is the red belt, and for this I will use Blood Angel's Red for that nice rich and vibrant colour. I paint red first because it is the innermost detail below the belt, pouches and knives, which I'll be painting over later. While painting the actual white portion was pretty straightforward, the real challenge comes in with filling in the details without making mistakes and making a mess. A careless brush stroke would ruin the crisp white paint job, so it's important to paint slowly and carefully. So next I want to paint the black details on their clothes as well as the pants and arm sleeves for the female models. When painting black, I try to avoid painting using pure black as the colour can be very one-dimensional. So I mix in a little bit of Incubi darkness to give a subtle colour tone to the blacks. Again, you're going to want to try and be as careful as possible to avoid hitting the white areas. This can be especially tricky when painting the trim on the male apprentice model, so I downsize my brush for better control. For the female model, the art shows that the trim has a little bit of a brown tone to it. So for this I mix Steel Legion Drab and black and carefully paint all the trim on the female model, both in the front and in the back. Next up, we are going to be painting all the leather portions on the miniatures with Steel Legion Drab, and these include the boots, the gloves, as well as the shoulder pads on the female model. The brown looks a little bit light right now, but don't worry because we will be toning it down with a wash later. Now we are going to be painting in the leather straps and pouches on the model using Cygor Brown. From the art, the brown used is quite dark and close to black, and Cygor brown is perfect for this. This might get a little tricky, especially for the female model where there is a strap that cuts right across her body. Take it slow and be careful. For their faces, we're going to be using Cadian Fleshtone, which is the standard base coat that I use for Caucasian skin. Carefully painting the face as well as the bit of exposed neck. Next, I use Gryphound orange and Snakebite leather to give the females a nice warm hair color to contrast with the rest of the relatively cold mini. I'm also painting the face mask for the male models using Gryphcharger grey. The mask turned out to be a little bit light, so I'll have to darken it with a wash later. Lastly, for the swords, knives and other metal details, I will paint them first with a base coat of Abaddon black and paint it over with metal later. And to finish off the base coats, we will paint in the bases with Ushabti bone. And now it's time for washes. We start off with the face using Reikland Fleshshade. I then tone down the mask a little with a bit of dark tone. For the leather portions, we are going to be using Agrax Earthshade, which will give us a nice weathered look. And we will finish the bases with our usual soft and green tone variation. While waiting for the wash to dry, I do a little bit of edge highlighting to try and bring out the white a little bit more. Just a little edge highlighting will really help to emphasize the crisp white paint job. You shouldn't highlight every single edge and just focus on the ones that are on the highest part of the model for a natural finish. Before I forget, I also go back and paint all the metal portions in with plate mail metal. Lastly, I dry brush the bases to bring out that lovely detail and finish off the model by painting the bezels black. Now that everything is painted up, let's take a closer look and see how the different methods worked out. Putting them side by side, I think I prefer the method using contrast paints as the shadows are a little deeper, but let me know which you prefer in the comments. I might try something a little different for the player character models, but in the meantime, these are two quick and easy methods to paint white that will get you a decent result quickly. I hope this has been helpful, and if you are looking for what to paint next, do check out my other videos on the Assassin's Creed board game.